Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor. Now it's time for your weekend tech tip, brought to you by Chevy Silverado.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We just got a great tech tip from Cody on how to rig those coonies behind a diver. Now we've got Brandon who's going to show us a couple of different ways that he likes to rig up his bobber dogging setups. I'm assuming that these are based on situation, kind of water that you're in.
Correct. So bobber dogging is kind of something that's been around now. We've really talked about since 2016. It's kind of something that but we used to do in the 80s and 90s. We just didn't have a name for it.
Right.
Okay. I use slinkies and I use cork and I stuff the peg in it and cast it out and drift fish it.
Yeah.
But now there's an actual name for it and companies that actually rate bobber dogging on the bobbers.
So, Arrow floats. Thank you, Dave.
But what's really nice about this technique is great for high water, fast water, muddy water, low gin clear water. Everything. Yeah. It works every day.
Yeah.
So this technique is awesome for people that are just trying to get out there for a few hours or fish all day, and they've only got maybe one rod. If they're on the bank, maybe they're drift boating by themselves, they can just do this, right? The other technique I like to do is when the water does drop down, gets clear, or I have a lot of activity on the river. So if I got a lot of people on the river, I'm going to probably step away from the bobber dog a little bit because that's what everybody else is doing. I'm going to do more of the finesse fishing.
Sure.
Okay. So I always refer to bobber dog as your ground and pound technique because you're taking this weight, you're making any type of a weight that you're going to use. I like to use anything that's around Dave's Tangle Free or P-lines, whatever I can find.
Now by from a B&R.
B&R, yeah. So whatever ones I can find, I'm going to use them because sometimes I can't find which manufacturer I want.
Sure.
But anyways, something that's going to be able to tap the bottom. Now, size-wise, the weights is going to be dictated on water height.
Sure.
So half ouncers, high water. Thirds that I'm using right now, and then quarters when the water gets a little clear.
Sure.
So 3 different sizes I'll use depending on water height, speed.
And what dictates that other than the speed? Is that the bounce, how your bobber is reacting tells you what's going on, dragging too much? Okay.
So the slower the water is, if you have too much weight, you're going to go under. You're going to snag up all the time, right? Now, bobber stop distances are going to be dictated too on how big a weight you are using and how deep a water you're fishing.
Okay.
So I adjust my bobber stops to about 3 different places on my rod.
Sure.
So low clear water, 1/3 ounce or 1/4 ounce, I usually shorten my bobber stops unless I'm going to fish a deep hole.
Sure.
When the water's up, I'm going to say, let's just say like an average height is higher than medium flow.
Sure.
Okay, so like almost brown water.
Right.
I'm going to go longer bobber stops and I'm going to use heavier weights. That's because the current's pushing it so quickly. I want to make sure my stuff stays in contact with the bottom.
Now with this one, you've got a double rig set up here. Is that what you do the majority of time, is have a double rig? And we'll even let me just kind of hold this up. We can get a full shot here. We got your standard bobber dogging set up, nothing too fancy here with the 3-way, the dropper like Brandon already talked about. And then you've got are these your gaps that you typically have?
Typically we have. So when I'm just going to tie my first leader up a little longer because if it's in low gin clear water, I typically do just a single.
Gotcha.
If the water's up and got a little color, I'm going to do a double a lot of times.
Okay.
My back leader is a little bit shorter. My main front leader is going to be a little bit longer. Now, if I'm in really dirty water, I'll shorten this up to about 2 feet and 2 feet.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I want it closer to the weight.
Gotcha.
Clearer water, I'm going to extend it out a little bit.
Sure. Give yourself a little bit of room. So double rig here on the standard sliding setup for bobber dogging. Now, the one that you've got here, I giggle because I've seen several different ways to do it. But this is a little bit different, a little bit smaller or shorter of a gap between that fixed float. So you would call this more of a finesse setup where this is dangling, it's not dragging the bottom.
So typically when you see me and I see you on the bank and I'm drift boating, 3/4 of the time I'm going to do this type of fishing. Okay?
Gotcha.
So this is just something like I use a clear drift float. This is your vertical floating bobber versus a lay on the side bobber, right? So this thing's going to be vertically fishing like so. I have an inline weight. Now, a lot of people don't do an inline weight because they're making short casts. Here in the metropolitan rivers, they're big. So we got to cover a lot of ground. So I need an inline weight so I can get guys to cast and make it get out there.
Gotcha.
I'm going to run about a 4 or 5 foot first piece of line here that's about 20-25 pound. Okay, so this piece right here is just to give me a little more length down to a split shot.
Gotcha.
Okay, depending on speed, depth of water, I'm going to add 1, 2, or 3.
Gotcha.
Okay, in general, I'm going to do 1 because it's low pure water.
Are you spreading them out on your lead?
No, I'm going to keep it kind of close to this swivel here. Okay. And then it's just like bobber dogging, but it's so light compared to that round weight, this thing's just going to barely tick, and then we have a nice leader here behind it, just kind of fluctuating in the current.
So
and naturally floating.
The float that you see here, you're going to want to see sitting straight up and down. You're not going to want to see it laying down. There's something wrong.
Exactly, and I run a colored corky on top, so if the corky is not laying on top of the bobber, I know something's screwed up.
Right.
But as soon as it does this, I know it's fishing.
Yep.
And same thing with the bobber dogging. I always run a discolored corky, because if the corky is not laying on top of the bobber, something's tangled up. But as soon as boom, now I know it's fishing. So I can tell, hey guys, pick it up. You know something's wrong with your bobber. Your corky's not on top. So.
Okay. So two very different ways to do it. Hybrid kind of way to bobber dog, or again, chandelier fishing.
Chandelier.
Anybody heard that? I'm not diving into it. This is them. This is their time, okay? But this is a system that is, you could do a number of different things with that setup. But small rivers, low clear water in a big river, that setup is what you prefer to go with.
So yesterday, first couple drifts, we caught fish on the bobber dogging, and then we got fish later on the chandeliering.
Okay.
Because we had a lot of people on the river, so I said, you know what, I'm going to get away from the ground and pound. I'm going to go to more the quietness, you know, the quiet technique. And then we got several bobber downs. We missed a couple because we had a lot of line out. The boat was moving away, and we missed a couple fish. We turned them. You can see them on the surface flopping, but you know, it is what it is.
And that happens when you got that much line below that bobber. There's certainly room for things to move.
Crank before you yank. That's the number one. So when I get guys doing this all the time, like, no, 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 no. Make sure you crank up your slack. Get firm, get tight, taunt, and then set the hook.
Crank before
you yank.
Crank before you yank. There's a T-shirt for you T-shirt manufacturers that are out there stealing.
Crank
you know who you
before
are.
you yank,
There is a good one right there. Just put a Brandon on the bottom of it.
Real till you feel.
Real till you feel.
That's what we always do say. Now I say crank before you yank.
I haven't seen those on T-shirts. I think that'd be perfect.
That's a good idea.
So, great. I love it. I love the setup. I've seen this before in different setups, and this is obviously a very standard setup.
And also, you know, a big one here is I'm going to talk about the bead colors, because that's our last one I heard. So if you guys want to see this real quick, this is just kind of like a standard everyday use. So I'm going to do some definitely brighter stuff when the water's discolored. When the water clears up, I'm going to go more lighter colors, stuff that doesn't spook the fish as much, right?
Maybe a little more natural, or just less intrusive?
It's less intrusive. I'm not looking for natural, because natural, if you actually know what a natural dead egg looks like, it's white.
White blob.
So yes, and white blobs do work too. But definitely in clear water, this pink sheen is my favorite. Okay.
Pull it right in here. Yep. Oh, right there. There you go.
Always going to fish sweet cherry.
Gotcha.
Okay. And then this little guy over here has been really good. I forget it's called the Flamingo or Cosmo. I think it's called Cosmo.
Pretty.
Very good. These three colors, that's all I had. I'd just fish them every day.
So my first question, I know you've got 100 different boxes from B&R, because Brandon, by the way, is the best out there. Both Brandons. I don't see any big beads. I don't see any.
They're somewhere else. Oh no, these are 16s.
Okay, these are 16s?
16s, 14s, 12s.
Are you playing with the 20s?
Yes.
Okay, so you're playing with all of them.
Yes, and so I didn't bring the 20s in because this was literally what I used yesterday.
Gotcha.
And that color, that's a 16.
All right, gotcha. So the sizes, are you going all the way down to 12 still if necessary? 14s? Are you sticking with the bigger ones only?
Yes, so low clear water, I'll definitely run more 12s. But, you know, yesterday, even though the water was really pretty clear, we had like 4 or 5 foot of this. We had a friend out there who was getting all his fish on 20s.
Oh, yeah.
You know, now our metropolitan fish are different than coastal fish. Okay. They didn't used to really bite 20s very well. I'd use them, I never got fish on them, so I'd always get fish on 14s. But this last year, I don't know what's changed, but maybe it's just because we're using more 20s, but man, they really are hitting them. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. What I do like about a 20 is I don't snag up as much.
Yeah, because that bounce,
man, it's got a bigger circumference, so actually the current picks it up, so it doesn't snag as much. So there's something good to be said about that. So running a bigger bead and then a smaller one behind that, you actually don't snag up as much.
Gotcha. All right, so great information all the way around. A couple different ways to set up for your bobber dogging scenario. I would say that the first one, of course, is very much standard. The second, more finesse, lower clear water conditions, or just changing it up from what everybody else is doing.
Very hard to cast. Remember that, guys. If you're around a lot of structure on the shoreline, it's really hard to cast that. So remember that. And also when it's flying through the air, if you watch it doing helicoptering, you got to slow down the spool and stop before it hits the water so it springs itself out. Or pull on it, make sure it untangles.
Remember?
And always watch that bobber and that corky, right?
Yeah, to make sure that it lays out.
Yeah, make sure that thing's always straight straight up on
With
that.
clients, I can only imagine that that's got to be...
It's frustrating.
Like absolutely paramount that you're following along with what that's doing.
So when I got 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, because I'll do 6 guys too, you know, you're watching all those corkies. You make sure all the corkies on top of the bobbers, and as I say, flick that line, pick it up, move it a little bit like that. And then what's really nice is with this technique is you're able to fish all the different areas of that spot, because I get guys are fishing long, guys are in the middle, guys are short, because you never know where the fish are going to be at from day to day, or how much pressure is on the river, right? Because more boats, more pressure, the fish move around a little bit. So
makes sense. Great tech tip, guys. We appreciate it. Everyone does. And Chevy, we appreciate you making that happen with that Chevy Silverado tech tip each week. All right, we're going to cut to a break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Cody and Brandon, talking about nothing but winter steelhead. We'll be right back.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by Yakima Bait, steeped in tradition, innovation, and fishing success. Procure Bait Sense, ruthlessly effective. And by North American Metals Incorporated, first choice for all your metal roofing and siding needs.